With the time that I have left, I want to talk a little bit about the oracle from Omaha, Warren Buffett. He was on CNBC all morning, maybe 3 hours a time. Listen to this cut. Listen to what Warren Buffett has to say about bubbles. Cut number 26.
So the big weapon is going to be something we haven't thought of probably.
We will have another bubble, and it will burst. It won't be the same as the last one. That's been the history. You don't have one internet after another. You have housing after the internet.
Right. Andrew,
but capitalism will continue to have excesses. You can count on that.
Well, you got one thing wrong. It's not the excesses of capitalism that create the bubbles. It's the excesses of government and central banks. And yes, Warren Buffett may have saw the bubble in the tech market. He did not buy a lot of the NASDAQ or a lot of the internet stocks. I'll credit him for that. But he was totally oblivious to the housing bubble. So the internet bubble ended, and he didn't know about the housing bubble. And he's right, again, about the fact that there will be another bubble, but he doesn't recognize it because it's already here. Just like he didn't recognize the housing bubble, he doesn't recognize the government bubble, the economic bubble that we're in now. And it's not because of capitalism. It is because of the very institutions that he now holds in such high regard. Here is some more of what Buffett had to say, though, and there are some words of wisdom buried in this. Talking about moral hazards and the government's role in creating the financial crisis. He was talking to Joe Kernan, and Joe Kernan on CNBC, who's one of the anchors, asked him, hey, Warren, wouldn't it be just better if we just let banks fail and let the free market sort it out? I mean, wouldn't the market be better than government guarantees and regulation? And instead of just answering yes, which is the answer, listen to what Warren Buffett had to say on CNBC this morning. This is cut number 21.
When they failed, the people at the top often went away rich. So it isn't like their calculus when they leveraged up was that if they would lose everything if it went bad, and they needed society to bail them out. So it was the shareholders that lost 90% or more in certain of the banking institutions. But the management's, I don't know of a CEO of one of the really big institutions, whether it's Freddie or Fannie or AIG or a number of the banks, where the CEO went away in any kind of financial distress at all. They went away rich.
Yeah, you could throw Warren Buffett in there, too. He had a lot of deals with Goldman Sachs. He had deals with Bank America, and he would have lost a lot of money. He'd have still been rich, but he'd have lost a lot of money if it wasn't for the bailouts. And whose fault is that? The government did that. The Federal Reserve did that. They wouldn't have walked away so rich if the government had simply let the chips fall where they may. In fact, he even mentioned earlier in this interview, they wouldn't have got so rich. They wouldn't have been able to get all that leverage. In fact, he does brush on that point again here, cut number 22.
They have a different calculus, and in the case of the banks, they were able to offer government guaranteed deposits. And in case of Freddie and Fannie, they had the implicit guarantee of the federal government, and that enabled them to leverage to the sky. And I think it's perfectly appropriate that they be regulated in terms of the amount of leverage they could have.
Yes, but why did they have all that leverage? He points it out. They had all the leverage because of the government guarantees. And he says, well, it's now perfectly appropriate to regulate them once we've made the mistake of guaranteeing their loans. Well, that is true. Once you have made that mistake, then you need to try to counteract that mistake by regulating it. But the regulation is never going to work. It's not going to work as well as the free market because there's too much politics involved. And why can't Warren Buffett recognize that? He says the government made a mistake. And so instead of just getting rid of the mistake, we need more government to counteract the mistake of government. How about Warren Buffett saying, yes, we had all this debt because the banks borrowed too much money, Fannie and Freddie borrowed too much money because the government made the mistake of guaranteeing the deposits and guaranteeing those loans. So what the solution is we admit the government caused all the leverage, the government caused the financial crisis, and let's stop doing that. Let's get rid of the government guarantees for home mortgages. Let's get rid of government-guaranteed bank accounts, and let's go back to a free market that works instead of trying to find a way to regulate a government that doesn't work. And, of course, since it's the government that doesn't work, why would we expect that the government regulators to work? You know, we had all sorts of regulation of the banking system all throughout the odd years when the housing bubble was being formed, when Fannie and Freddie were taking on all this debt. We had tons of regulations. We had all sorts of oversight. The problem is now Warren Buffett says, well, we just need more. We need to do a better job. Well, it's never going to be enough. It doesn't matter how much we have, it still won't be enough, and they're never going to do a better job. The mistake is in getting the government involved in the first place. And that's what Warren Buffett refuses to acknowledge, because he wants to sign on to the big government agenda of the Obama administration, and he doesn't want to embrace the very system that made him a multi-billionaire, which is capitalism. And he wants to make sure that other people cannot repeat the success that he's enjoyed. That's it for today.